We bring in Dr. Jim Malatras, former chancellor at the State University of New York System. Thank you so much for joining us. I've talked to you on this topic quite a bit. Now we're seeing more movement. We've seen one university president resign. Is this a decision you think that should be made internally without these external forces taken into account, or is it impossible to not take them into account?
I think we have to have a larger reckoning with what's going on our college campuses. And I think it's on all of us to engage in this dialogue. So whether there's broad accountability from one or two of these situations, or whether it's virtue signaling, time will tell. But I think what you saw from the students at UPenn, for instance, was, well, what's next? Because this runs deep. It's not just about one person. It's about a whole collective infrastructure, which, by the way, in colleges and universities, presidents are a part of a shared governance model, which means they're one piece of the larger leadership model, but faculty, staff, students, they're all engaged in that overall approach on campuses. So this is just a step, I think, hopefully in a direction of eliminating anti-Semitism on campuses.
And Dr. Malatras, you raised such a good point, the kind of what happens next. So I'd kind of like to look at two scenarios here. Let's say Harvard and MIT's presidents are also forced out or they choose to resign. How should those institutions, as well as UPenn, move forward?
I think the three presidents that were at the hearing are distinguished academics, and I'm not going to get involved in whether they should stay or go, because I think it's broader than that. And I think what you're really seeing is what you saw at that hearing was they were twisting themselves into legal pretzels because they haven't really grappled with the issue of speech versus how do you deal with diversity and inclusion on college campuses. And I think Bret Stephens in the New York Times had it best. There's a double standard which is being exposed. In other examples, people were quick to react. But when it came to Jewish students or issues of anti-Semitism, there was inaction, and in fact, the reverse of that. So now I think you have to get on college campuses and have that broader discussion, have that moral reckoning, or these issues will just continue to fester and grow.
Absolutely. And whether or not these presidents do decide to resign, whether or not they end up staying. I mean, how do these institutions move forward? I know you said that there has to be this reckoning, so to speak, on language and what is allowed, what is not tolerated. But regardless, they have to move forward. How is that done?
Some of it's easy. Anti-Semitism is wrong, full stop. Genocide is wrong, full stop. It's not hard to say those things. When you come from that position, then you can engage in those broader dialogues. But right now, unless you put forth that clear, decisive language, it won't stop. And you've seen that in other issues. And I think that's the double standard that people are really concerned about, especially when it comes to anti-Semitism. There wasn't that moral clarity, as the previous speaker spoke about, out of the gate. There was a tepid response, as I mentioned before. And that's what let this grow. I think you have to clearly state unequivocally that these things are wrong, and then engage in those broader issues, because this is a broader issue on campuses. This is not just about one college president or three college presidents. It's about an entire infrastructure, an entire culture and community on these college campuses.
Absolutely. And regardless of what happens at Harvard, at MIT, what we are seeing already happening at UPenn, do you think we will see more ripple effects coming out of that congressional hearing?
I hope there's ripple effects in the positive way, which is where we come to a common understanding as opposed to negative. And I think some of the presidents now, especially at Harvard, are going through, I think, some personal things where people are raising her dissertations. And I think that actually cheapens the issue in a way, and it avoids the serious issues at hand, which is anti-Semitism and how we're grappling or not grappling with these on college campuses. Because the fact of the matter is, on many college campuses, they haven't been the paragons of virtue when it comes to how do you help make Jewish students feel included on campus is only getting worse. So I hope that this leads to a positive engagement as opposed to just this divisive nature that we have in our society right now, which doesn't solve a problem. It just perpetuates the problem in different ways.
And you did serve as a chancellor. And before we let you go, I want to ask you, how did Harvard, how did MIT, all of these institutions, so many that are unnamed, even get to this point? I mean, what does it say about the culture on our college campuses?
I think this is where the issue where people have really struggled with how do you create a diverse institutional culture and also allow for free speech. But a diverse culture, what we're finding out is diversity and inclusion is different depending on who you talk to. And I think what Jewish students are feeling in particular, or Jewish faculty members are feeling in particular, are they're not included in that conversation.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.